From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
And a special thanks to the President of the United States.
In the most expensive congressional race in history, Republican Karen Handel has defeated Democrat Jon Ossoff in a special election in Georgia. We'll go to Atlanta for a response. Then we look at how Senate Republicans are attempting to push through a new health care bill without any public debate. We'll speak with Nation publisher Katrina vanden Heuvel. Plus, we speak to a leading community organizer in Little Pakistan in Brooklyn. The neighborhood persevered after 9/11. Can it survive in the age of Trump?
So in Little Pakistan in Brooklyn, people stop me on the streets all the time asking me what to do. They are worried about their immigration status, they're worried about their children, they're worried about their families. They're always in fear of this administration coming back and putting in more bans or other issues regarding them.
We'll look at the case of yet another attempted deportation. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Georgia, Republicans have pulled off a victory in the most expensive congressional race in history. In a special election in Georgia's 6th district, Republican Karen Handel won nearly 53% of the vote, defeating her challenger, Democrat Jon Ossoff, to fill the seat left vacant by Dr. Tom Price, resigned to become Secretary of Health and Human Services. The candidates and outside groups spent more than $55 million on the race, a record-shattering amount. While the Atlanta seat has been held by a Republican for decades, Democrats were hoping to pull off an upset in the suburban Atlanta district where President Trump's approval rating is just 35%. This marks the 4th congressional race Democrats have lost since the election of Trump. This is Karen Handel speaking Tuesday night.
And a special thanks to the President of the United States.
Karen Handel, as the former Secretary of State of Georgia, she made national headlines in 2012 when she led an effort at the breast cancer charity Susan G. Komen to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood. Meanwhile, in South Carolina, Republicans pulled off another victory in the special election to fill the seat left vacant by the Director of Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney. Republican Ralph Norman eked out a narrow victory over Democratic challenger Archie Parmel. Norman won only 51% of the vote, a smaller margin than expected. We'll have more on the Georgia and South Carolina races after headlines. In news from Capitol Hill, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has become the latest member of Trump's inner circle to hire a personal lawyer amidst the ongoing investigations into the Trump administration's ties to Russia. Vice President Mike Pence and Trump himself have also hired personal lawyers. On Tuesday, Special Counsel Robert Mueller met with members of the House Intelligence Committee to discuss a plan to ensure their parallel investigations do not conflict with one another. Also on Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer told reporters Trump will make an announcement this week about whether the president taped any of his conversations with former FBI Director James Comey. Last month, in a Twitter rant, Trump threatened Comey over the possibility of taped conversations, tweeting, "James Comey better hope there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press," unquote. Sean Spicer also said Tuesday he hasn't talked to Trump about whether the president believes Russia interfered with the 2016 U.S. election during the first on-camera White House press briefing in 8 days. Meanwhile, in more news on Sean Spicer, unnamed officials say Spicer may be ousted as White House press secretary. The speculation comes only weeks after Trump's communications director, Michael Dubke, resigned. The New York Times is reporting senior officials from multiple federal agencies were worried that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was a blackmail risk as early as January, yet proceeded to allow him to participate in top-secret intelligence briefings alongside President Trump for nearly 3 weeks, despite these concerns. The Times reports officials from the FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence were all worried General Flynn might be susceptible to blackmail by Russian officials after Flynn lied about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said Republicans will release a draft of the health care bill on Thursday morning as Republicans face widespread outrage for negotiating the bill in secret, closed-door meetings. The Republicans' bill would strip 23 million people of their health insurance while giving billions of dollars in tax breaks to wealthy Americans. They're pushing for a vote on the bill before the July 4th recess. We'll have more on the Republican health care plan later in the broadcast. In the latest escalation in Syria, the Pentagon says a U.S. fighter jet shot down an Iranian-made armed drone on Tuesday, only days after the U.S. shot down a Syrian warplane on Sunday. The Pentagon claims the drone was flying toward U.S.-backed Syrian fighters. Russian officials have threatened to target U.S. planes flying west of the Euphrates River. Tuesday's downing of the drone is sparking increasing fears of the possibility of a direct confrontation between the U.S. and Russia in Syria. This is United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
I am concerned, even if there were some declarations more recently that gave us the idea that there would be a de-escalation of this situation, and I strongly hope that there will be a de-escalation of this situation, because these kind of incidents can be very dangerous in a conflict situation in which there are so many actors and in which the situation is so complex on the ground. So indeed, I am concerned, and I hope that this will not lead to any escalation of a conflict that is already as dramatic as it is.
In Saudi Arabia, King Salman has deposed his nephew as crown prince and has replaced him with his son. Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz is now first in line for the throne. Mohammed bin Salman currently serves as defense minister and has been presiding over the devastating U.S.-backed Saudi-led war in Yemen. In response to the news, the Huffington Post foreign affairs reporter Akbar Shahid Ahmed tweeted, quote, "This is huge. Man he is replacing was against Qatar crusade and Yemen war. Saudi is doubling down on its most controversial actions," unquote. Meanwhile, in Yemen, health officials say multiple U.S.-backed Saudi-led coalition airstrikes killed at least 25 civilians at a market in northern Sa'da province on Sunday. Graphic images that circulated on social media over the weekend show corpses lying amidst rubble and survivors surveying the damage to the market. More than 10,000 people have died amidst the ongoing U.S.-backed Saudi-led war in Yemen, which has also destroyed Yemen's health, water, and sanitation systems, sparking a deadly cholera outbreak. The U.S. State Department expressed confusion on Tuesday about Saudi Arabia's move to cut diplomatic ties with Qatar, saying the Saudis and other Gulf countries have not revealed their grievances more than 2 weeks after they severed ties. State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert said Tuesday, quote, "At this point, we're left with one simple question. Were the actions really about their concerns about Qatar's alleged support for terrorism, or were they about the long-simmering grievances between and among the GCC countries," unquote, referring to the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. President Trump initially celebrated and even tried to claim credit for Saudi Arabia's decision to cut ties with Qatar, tweeting, quote, "During my recent trip to the Middle East, I stated that there can no longer be funding of radical ideology. Leaders pointed to Qatar. Look," unquote. But then a week later, the U.S. agreed to sell $12 billion worth of U.S.-manufactured F-15 fighter jets to Qatar. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is meeting with Chinese officials today. Tillerson was planning to use the meetings to press Chinese officials to continue to confront North Korea over its nuclear program. But on Tuesday afternoon, President Trump appeared to abandon this effort in a tweet, writing, quote, "While I greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi and China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out, and at least I know China tried," unquote. The New York Times reports that senior officials say they're trying to understand the meaning of the tweet. In Somalia, at least 15 people were killed in a suicide car bombing in the capital Mogadishu Tuesday. Police say most of the victims were civilians. The militant group al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. The International Organization for Migration says as many as 120 refugees are missing and feared drowned after a boat sank off the coast of Libya Friday. The majority of the victims were Sudanese and Nigerian. At least 2,000 refugees have now died this year while attempting to cross the Mediterranean and reach Europe. Meanwhile, in Hungary, the trial has begun of 4 men charged with killing 71 refugees who were found suffocated in the back of an abandoned, overcrowded truck in 2015. The victims were from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan and included at least 4 children. The men are also charged with human trafficking. The United Nations is accusing a militia linked to the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo of committing human rights abuses, including ethnically motivated attacks against women and children in the central Kasai region. This is UN Rights Chief Zeid Ra'ad Al-Hussein.
Refugees from multiple villages in the Kamonya territory indicated that the Banamura have in the past 2 months shot dead, hacked or burnt to death and mutilated hundreds of villagers, as well as destroying entire villages.
In Honduras, journalist and congressional candidate Victor Funes was murdered outside his home in the Caribbean coastal city of La Ceiba on Thursday. Victor Funes directed the local nighttime television news show. Police say they've arrested a suspect in the case. Human rights groups say Funes is at least the 70th journalist murdered in Honduras since 2001. Uber founder Travis Kalanick has resigned as CEO amidst a widespread sexual harassment scandal at the Wall Street-backed ride-hailing company. His departure comes after a revolt by a number of investors who demanded Kalanick's ouster. Last week, billionaire David Bonderman also resigned from Uber's board after making disparaging comments about women at a board meeting intended to address sexual harassment, saying if there were more women on the board, quote, it's much more likely to be more talking, unquote. At least 20 Uber workers have also been fired over the reports of sexual harassment. The dash camera video of the police killing of African-American motorist Philando Castile in Minnesota has been released only days after police officer Geronimo Yanez was acquitted of manslaughter. The dash cam video shows Yanez pointing his gun at Castile through the driver's side window. Castile then informs the officer he has a gun in the car, which he was licensed to carry. In the video, you can also hear the voices of Castile's girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, and her 4-year-old daughter, who were both inside the car. A warning to our audience, this video is graphic.
Sir, I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it, then. Don't pull it out.
I'm happy to pull it out.
Don't pull it out.
You just killed my boy. He wasn't reaching.
Don't pull it out.
He wasn't.
Don't move.
Oh, man, I can't.
Don't move.
Oh, my
Don't move.
Oh, my God, I'm shaking.
Don't move.
Don't move, baby.
Code 3. Get the baby girl out of here.
Get the baby girl out of here. The words of police officer Geronimo Yanez screaming as the 4-year-old girl escaped from the car after watching Philando Castile being shot 7 times by the officer, Yanez. And in Ferguson, Missouri, the parents of Michael Brown have settled their wrongful death lawsuit with the city of Ferguson over the murder of their son by white police officer Darren Wilson in August of 2014. Michael Brown was 18 years old and unarmed when Officer Wilson shot him dead and then left his body to lie in the street for over 4 hours. The settlement is sealed, which means the terms will not be made public. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show in Georgia, where the Republicans have pulled off a victory in the most expensive congressional race in history. In a special election in Georgia's 6th district, Republican Karen Handel won nearly 53% of the vote, defeating her challenger, Democrat Jon Ossoff, to fill the seat left vacant after Tom Price resigned to become Secretary of Health and Human Services. The candidates and outside groups spent more than $55 million on the race, a record-shattering amount. While the seat has been held by a Republican for decades, Democrats were hoping to pull off an upset in the suburban Atlanta district, where President Trump's approval rating is just 35%. This marks the 4th congressional race Democrats have lost since the election of Trump. Speaking Tuesday night, Handel thanked President Trump.
I need to also thank Speaker Ryan and the House leadership and so many of the members across this country who also united to help us hold the 6th. And a special thanks to the President of the United States.
Karen Handel is the former Secretary of State of Georgia. She made national headlines in 2012 when she led an effort at the breast cancer charity Susan G. Komen to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood. She later resigned from the organization after the board voted to restore the money following public outcry. On Tuesday night, Handel's challenger, 30-year-old Democrat Jon Ossoff, also addressed supporters.
And we showed the world that in places where no one thought it was even possible to fight, we could fight. We showed them what courage and kindness and humility are capable of. We showed them that we can still build coalitions of people who may not see eye to eye on everything, but rather than demonizing each other, we find common ground to move forward. And that's the only way this country will move forward.
We go now to Atlanta, where we're joined by 2 guests. The Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock is senior pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, which was the spiritual home of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He's also the chair of the New Georgia Project. Nan Orrock is also with us, a Democratic state senator in Georgia. Her Senate District 36 includes downtown Atlanta. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's begin with Dr. Raphael Warnock. What happened in Atlanta? It was very close, but in the end, the Republican pulled it out. And Karen Handel, in her acceptance speech and her victory speech last night, thanked President Trump as people chanted, "Trump, Trump."
Well, good to be here with you, Amy, even on a day like this. We have to play for the long game. We were very focused on this election. Indeed, the whole country's been focused on this special election here in Georgia. I do think we have to keep in mind that this has been a solid Republican district for a very long time, for about 4 decades. So this was an uphill journey from the beginning. The fact that this was actually a real race, that there was serious movement on the left, can only be accounted for with reference to Donald Trump. So there is deep unrest in the country. His approval rating is very low, even in that district. I found it very interesting and curious that Karen Handel virtually ran away from the president during the campaign and ran toward him last night during her victory speech. So we'll continue to make the case. As chair of the New Georgia Project, we're very focused on expanding the electorate. I believe that our social vision will be as narrow as the electorate is. And what we've witnessed over the last few years, especially after the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, is the effort of Republican legislatures all across the country to make it very difficult for black, brown, poor people, old people, young people to register and to vote. And that's the work of the New Georgia Project. And that's the work we'll continue to do in the next several months, even the next few years. We've registered 215,000 new voters Since 2014, we hope to register about 1 million by the end of the decade.
Nan Arok, your response to what took place in this staggeringly expensive congressional race, the most expensive race in the history, congressional race in the history of this country?
We are, of course, disappointed, but at the same time very mindful, as Pastor Warnock said, that this has been a deep red district since 1979. And for Jon Ossoff to even attempt to score in this congressional district is remarkable, and his performance is remarkable. The activity that we saw on the ground, the outpouring, it awakened the electorate in the Congressional District 6 that thought it had nowhere to go. The diversity of his support and the intensity, the enthusiasm. I can't remember when I've seen such an enthusiastic, sustained effort here in this state. And the way I look at it, Amy, is that no, we didn't take the seat last night. We worked in a way, and Jon Ossoff presented a candidacy that demanded that the Republicans go all out, leave no holes barred, to take the seat, as they did last night, with a very flawed candidate, frankly, Karen Handel, who, as Secretary of State, presided over blocking people from voting. She had the Justice Department reprimanding her for her attempt to eliminate voters from the rolls. And I have to say, we've had a battle here in Georgia around access to the ballot. We were one of the first states in 2005, the Republican-controlled legislature, with the Republican governor, Sonny Perdue, put into law a voter ID that was just onerous. We've sued, we've fought about it. It did have the effect of waking people up to say, they're not going to take my right to vote. And it's we're continuing to battle to bring out the electorate here that's going to turn this state blue. And I see last night, I see this prolonged, a months-long battle over this, trying to flip the 6, as a real laying the groundwork for, as the ladies out there in Cobb are saying, the Democratic women that have organized themselves into Pave It Blue. We're going to pave it blue, and you're going to see right in this congressional district winning seats. We're going to take seats from Republicans in elections for next year's General Assembly seats, Senate and House, because of the energy, the infrastructure, and the hope that has been restored in that district, that there's somebody else out there besides this deep red GOP anti-people sort of agenda.
This was the district of Newt Gingrich before Dr. Price, and he won by, what, something like 23%.
That's right.
When he won, but then he resigned to become the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Romney won by something like that, percentage, 23% more. But Trump in 2016 won by something like just over 1%.
That's right.
And yet you
That's
have
right.
Karen Handel thanking Trump and the crowd chanting Trump. Has there been a change in these few months?
I think the Republicans are embattled. This is the administration that we've witnessed over these last months. I mean, everybody in Washington in the administration is lawyering up right now, and I think that in the deep red Trump supporter base, they're rallying around him. But that base is shrinking. That's what the numbers tell us. That base is shrinking.
Well, and I think we have to keep in mind that part of what Karen Handel won for herself last night is the opportunity to have to run again in the fall of 2018. I'm not about to predict what will happen for that race. That's a long time off. But her thanking Donald Trump might be the basis of an interesting commercial in 2018 as we witness the scandals of the Trump administration unfold, and we'll see where that goes. But she might live to regret those words.
But in terms of what took place, Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, the issue of gerrymandering, can you talk about what's happening in Atlanta, in Georgia?
Yeah, well, as the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court a few summers ago, many of us have been really having to fight the good fight on the ground. As Senator Orrock pointed out, even before that happened, in 2005, Georgia has the distinction of leading the pack with making it hard for people to vote. So we've been fighting this issue for a long time. You know that about a month ago, the Supreme Court ruled that racial gerrymandering in the case in North Carolina was unconstitutional. Ironically, it was Clarence Thomas who cast the deciding vote, decided with the majority. But this is going to be a real fight in the days ahead. You don't get people really excited talking about gerrymandering. It's not the sexiest issue, but it is one of the most consequential issues facing our democracy. There is a way in which we have got to get the people's voice back. A lot of us are very focused and concerned about this administration and asking the question, have we turned into a kleptocracy? But beyond the kind of crude way in which we're not sure what the Trump administration is up to and what kinds of resources that they may be trying to extract from our democracy, in a real sense, the people's voices have been stolen a long time ago. We're living in a kind of kleptocracy. I'm not excited about the fact that this was the most expensive congressional race in history. There's a disconnect between what the people want and what we get. How is it that most Americans want reasonable gun reform, but we can't get reasonable gun reform legislation in our country? It is because of the outsized voice of corporatist interests, the gun lobby, too much money in our elections, racial gerrymandering. All of these issues we'll have to fight, and the way we're fighting it in the New Georgia Project is to register as many people as we can. We think that part of the answer to voter suppression is massive voter mobilization and registration, while also addressing these other public policy issues at the state capitol and otherwise.
Karen Handel is known around the country, not so much as Secretary of State, the past Secretary of State of Georgia, Nan Orrock, but as the woman who tried to stop the funding of Planned Parenthood when she was at Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. There was a massive outcry across the country. She was tossed out. But how does this, what kind of omen is this for Planned Parenthood? Because right now you have the Senate health care plan that's supposedly going to be released on Thursday morning. Interestingly, McConnell only announced this after the results were in Georgia, leading many to believe he understood this is quite controversial. And of course, a part of that is the issue of defunding Planned Parenthood. What kind of message does this send?
Well, you know, it's very interesting. I was with the Center for Reproductive Rights last week in Washington with women legislators and activists from around the country. And the polling numbers are very startling. Over 40% of Republicans support the right to abortion and maintaining Roe v. Wade. And the numbers are astronomical among Democrats. It's another example, as Pastor Warnock said, of where the mass of people are on one side of this issue, and yet you have this narrow, reactionary, anti-people agenda that's being driven by the GOP, and they have been well served by gerrymandering. We really launched and mobilized against them in the session here this several months ago here in the General Assembly to smash their bill to reapportion. You know, they've go around now and they're not satisfied with reapportioning every 10 years after the census. Whenever one of their people are in trouble, they go in and want to tweak the district and move African-American voters, move Democratic voters out of that district. And they tried that with a bill this session. They called a surprise meeting at 8 in the morning with not even 24 hours notice. And do you know, we packed that room, almost 200 people packed into that room, and they folded their tents, and that bill did not become law. But so there's more attention being paid now to this outlandish gerrymandering and the way that they are controlling seats. And as has been demonstrated, it makes for polarized politics when people don't have to come together in the middle to look for solutions.
Racial gerrymandering, placing polling stations in police stations, the kinds of abuse we witness in Quitman County. I would encourage your viewers to Google Quitman County and voting rights. If you read that story, it will read like something out of the 1950s. And this was literally just a couple years ago here in Georgia, as the NAACP and other grassroots organizers simply focused on registering people to vote. In some cases, their own family members. One woman spoke and signed for her father, who was unable to sign the application. I believe he was blind or something. But literally, people facing criminal charges.
That's right.
For trying to give voice to ordinary people. So we've got to build a big tent, a broad coalition of women, poor people, minorities,
on that
young people.
On that issue
Yes.
of a broad tent, do you think, Dr. Raphael Warnock, that Ossoff represented, I mean, is this not just a battle between Republicans and Democrats, but the heart of the Democratic Party? Right now, massive issue in the country is the issue of health care. He was opposed to single-payer health care. Many felt he was running away from a progressive Democratic platform as he ran against the Republican candidate. Do you think this is a message to the Democratic Party, almost like the Hillary-Bernie Sanders divide, that they're going in the wrong direction?
Well, I'll let the politicians get into the mix of how to, win an election. I'm a progressive. These are the issues that I'll continue to fight for. I believe that it's a shame that in the richest country in the world, we don't have universal health care. But it's not just a moral issue. It's really impractical. We continue to try in the United States to pull something off that hasn't worked anywhere, and that is this idea that you take health care and throw it into the marketplace. I think the market is good for some things, but this idea that the market is a panacea, a cure-all for all ills, is a kind of religious doctrine and fanaticism that I don't embrace as a person of faith. I mean, we bring a critical eye even to our faith, but there's some folk who seem to think that the market is the answer to everything. And yet, in order to get here, we drove through streets that all of us pay for. We turned on our water fountain, and we were assured that that water was protected, because there's some things that we have to do together. And health care is something that we ought to make sure that everybody has access to.
Well, finally, let me put that question to Nan Arok, Democratic state senator in Georgia, representing downtown Atlanta. Politico saying the biggest beneficiary of the progressive resistance opposes a push for single-payer health care or hiking income taxes. What about this? What about people saying that the Democrat ran away from core Democratic values and that this isn't really a referendum on where the Democrats could be in this country?
Well, I am not going to Monday morning quarterback on Jon Ossoff's race, which was a remarkable race, an incredible gain from where the last Republican that ran was 22 points up, and we were 2 points lower than 50% in a race that was not supposed to ever even be feasible. He had to win Republican votes. He won, I believe, 1 out of 10 Republican votes, took the undecided, the independents, at least split them, and fought to expand the Democratic electorate. I talked last night, Amy, with a young Latina woman who had fought every day in this campaign, and she was in no way downcast. She said, we did incredible grassroots organizing, and we did special teams out to different communities and seeking out the different ethnicities that are in this very district that's very diverse. Now, let me say this. Georgia is over 30% African-American citizenship. This district is 25% people of color, 25, 75, and we did that kind of performance there. things are on the move and things are changing. I was speaking last night with our candidate for governor, Stacey Abrams, who's going to mount a remarkable campaign, is already out there on the campaign trail. And we're going to see history made in Georgia. The other thing is that Georgia used to be totally in the backwater when it came to national politics. We didn't have Obama money in this state. We didn't have any Clinton money to speak of in this state in these last two big presidential contests. But yet and still, we were one of the most purple of the red states. This campaign has continued the trajectory of waking up the nation about coming to Georgia and working here to turn this state around. We're in a state where the governor didn't expand Medicare. We have Medicaid expansion was never done here. We have a huge number, one of the top numbers of uninsured people in this state. And I think the future is bright, the future is blue in Georgia, at the risk of sounding like a bumper sticker. But what I saw in this campaign, and I had close family members that worked in it every day, got up and went out and knocked on doors all day long. The enthusiasm, the layers of people. If you could have been at that hotel last night, you couldn't get in. The cars were backed up. I mean, you never would have expected that in that district. And so people are awake in Georgia, and we're moving in the right direction, and we're going to see that in next year's statewide elections for these top offices.
Well, I want to thank you both for being with us. Nan Arok, Democratic State Senator in Georgia, and Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock of the Ebenezer Baptist Church. This is Democracy Now! Thank you so much for being there. When we come back, Katrina vanden Heuvel, publisher of The Nation, on what this race means and broader issues around the country as the Republicans secretly craft a health care bill in the Senate. It will be revealed in the next few days. What does this mean for this country and other issues? Stay with us.
My gunshots will make you levitate. I'm only 19, but my mind is older. When the things get for real, my warm heart turns cold. Another get deceased, another story is told. It ain't nothing really. And yo, done sparked the Philly, so I could get my mind off these yellow back. While they still alive, I don't know, go figure. Meanwhile, back in Queens, the realness and foundation. If I die, I couldn't choose a better location. When the slugs penetrate, feel a burning sensation, getting closer to God in a tight situation now. Take these words home and think it through, or the next rhyme I write might be about you. Son, they shook, cause ain't no such things as halfway crooks. Scared to death and scared to look, they shook, cause ain't no such things as halfway crooks. Scared to death and scared to look. Living the life that is diamonds and guns. There's numerous ways you can choose to earn funds. Some get shot, locked down, and turn nuns. Cowardly hearts and straight up shook ones. He ain't a crook, son. He just a shook one. For every rhyme I write, it's 25 to life. There was so much to gas you trust, safeguard on my life.
Shook Ones Part 2 by Mobb Deep. Queens rapper Prodigy died Tuesday in Las Vegas of complications from sickle cell anemia, which he's been battling since birth. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Senate Republicans have announced plans to finally unveil the text of their draft bill on Thursday to repeal the Affordable Care Act. This comes after Democrats launched a flurry of motions, speeches, procedural maneuvers to bring the Senate floor to a halt Monday in order to protest the Republicans' plan to push through a new health care bill without any public debate. The Republicans' bill would strip 23 million people of their health insurance while giving billions of dollars in tax breaks to wealthy Americans. That's the House bill. Republican senators have been drafting the final version of the bill in secret closed-door meetings. They're pushing for a vote on the bill before July 4th recess. This is California Democratic Senator Kamala Harris.
I remember when our colleagues across the aisle said the Affordable Care Act was being rammed down the American people's throats in the middle of the night. Well, the ACA went, in fact, through 106 public hearings. It incorporated more than 170 Republican amendments. The whole process took an entire year. But this health care plan involves no hearings, no bill text, and no transparency at all.
So that's California Senator Kamala Harris. A number of Republicans have also spoken out, from Utah's Mike Lee to Arizona's McCain to Senator Paul. We're joined now by Katrina vanden Heuvel, editor and publisher of The Nation, America's oldest weekly magazine. Katrina vanden Heuvel is also a columnist for the WashingtonPost.com. Her latest column on Trump, the media's malpractice, continues. So what's happening here?
Thank you, Amy. Well, let me just say about Georgia. Don't overread. Don't be demoralized. The Cook Report, pretty acclaimed monitoring of congressional seats, just the other day said that currently 71% of congressional districts are competitive. I mean, those could be won. You're looking at how tough the Republicans had it to win in ruby red districts. I think it's important, as John Nichols in The Nation did last week, to look down ballot at a kind of resistance and renewal politics, where you're witnessing in the 9th Assembly District in New York, Christine Pellegrino, someone you've covered, Chokwe Lumumba, in Jackson, Mississippi. Larry Krasner is poised to be the next district attorney in Philadelphia, progressive, taking on the criminal justice system. Sarah Vowell in St. Louis. So I think we need to look down ballot, and I think we need to understand how competitive the House races will be in light of the struggle of the Republicans to keep these ruby red districts.
Well, what about this issue of what Ossoff exactly represented? The critique that he didn't push forward core platform issues like single payer, free tuition,
Fight for 15. No, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I believe Nan Orrick spoke to Stacey Abrams, who may be the first African-American governor of Georgia, who launched her campaign on the eve of this race. She brought two pillars of the Democratic Party, Nina Turner, who's been with Bernie Sanders, Jason Kander, who's more on the Clinton side. But together they spoke to a new kind of majority you could build in Georgia, not pitting against the white working class, because after all, it's a working class, bringing together in a majority-minority state soon, Latinos, African-Americans, young people, women, white working class, and finding a way to bridge those gaps and speak to the issues. I do believe you need a bold, inclusive, progressive agenda to speak to people. It is tough in different, a Montana Democrat isn't a New York Democrat, but they're core issues, which I would argue are neither right nor left. And if there's turnout, passion, and commitment, we know that many of these progressive big issues are majority issues. So I think that's important, Amy. I also think it's important just to say that the media, the way it overread this election, it became a massive horse race. And, the money pouring in, the media attention, not looking at some of those down ballot races I just spoke about, which also prefigure and augur a kind of politics in this country. And if you can link those local, state to the national, you can see some real energy in this country. And I think, Nan Orrick, someone I greatly admire, The Nation's written about her, spoke well about what is left behind after this race is an organizing energy. I'd implore people to be patient. Stamina is going to be needed because we're up against tough forces, and the money piece is brutal. And it's a cliche, but it's real. Organized people versus organized money. Though Ossoff brought in a lot, let's not forget 2/3, I believe, of his contributions were small donors. And I think that's important if we can build on a kind of public financing, small donor politics.
So nationally, healthcare, what's taking place right now? Interesting that McConnell revealed that he's going to release this secretly crafted bill right after the Georgia race results.
I mean, I think it's really important to continue to expose as best we can the stealth, the secrecy that not only pervades the way the Republicans are handling this healthcare bill, but inside Washington generally. Also rolling back after the cratering of our economy 8-9 years ago, financial deregulations that are going to hurt working people, poor people. But I think they're rushing it, Amy, for a very simple reason. They know how unpopular it is, not just with the American people, but with members of their own constituency, and they're desperately trying to move something before they go back to they head into the July 4th recess, because they've seen this anger and passion in this country. And among Trump and the Republicans' own supporters who are going to be disproportionately hurt by a bill which is essentially a scam. I mean, at the heart of it is $1 trillion tax cut for the very richest. I think it's an opening for progressives to fight for Medicare for all. I mean, those who say it's pie in the sky ignore poll after poll, survey after survey who show majority support of Medicare for all. And look at California. I mean, the state Senate has passed it. It's heading to the state assembly. It is doable. We should unleash our imaginations about what is possible in these times.
But they will release this on Thursday. Then the question is, will it be, quote, scored? The Republicans in the House passed this before the scoring. That said 23 million
is supposed to come very quickly after. And how is it going to be? I mean, we're looking at maybe marginal tweaks to that score. I mean, first of all, this affects 1/6 of the economy, this health care bill, and about 140 million people, families. And they're rushing this through in secrecy. That is undemocratic, anti-democratic.
And yet where is, for example, Bernie Sanders' bill on health care, on Medicare for all?
Or John Conyers, who's been a stalwart for years, and those have sponsors. But that doesn't get the attention. And I do think in my column on media malpractice, I think what's happened is there's been so much focus on the scandals, the palace intrigues of the Trump administration, that it's shameful. I believe in the course of 2 days, the major newspapers, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, didn't give any front-page coverage to a health care bill that has the ability to reshape this country. So I think we need attention on substantive policy issues and not just a sensationalism that gets ratings for a lot of these.
Well, I mean, the airwaves are filled with something. And I'm not talking about Fox. I'm talking about MSNBC and CNN. And it's the constant Russia drumbeat. And you have to ask, when you're looking at politics in Georgia, when people turn on television and they're talking about the Russia cover-up, how this affects their lives. And your thoughts on this as a Russia expert?
Well, I mean, I think it's just common sense. I mean, one needs to have coverage of the investigation into alleged collusion, the corruption matrix. But, you know, what about what's going on in Flint? What's going on in parts of this country? I think it is obscuring the real-life experience millions of people are living, and it is a hijacking of our airwaves, a dereliction of duty to issues that demand more attention. There's no, you know, give it some coverage. But, you know, Chris Murphy tweeted the day Jeff Sessions testified, give that 10%, 90% people focus on healthcare, media focus on healthcare, focus on the toxic agenda that is being passed without enough attention. I think it's a disservice to this country, and I think it's not only for ratings, but, you know, remember Les Moonves of CBS said at the beginning of the Trump, you know, I mean, he said the Trump campaign's great for our ratings, may not be great for America. Jeff Zucker of CNN just recently said same thing. They're also very happy with the other war on the media, Amy, which is the deregulation agenda. The FCC is going to roll back cross-ownership, net neutrality, and I think that, too, is going to strip people of a democratic airwaves, which, as you've said many times, belongs to the people. So
I want to go to your piece in the WashingtonPost.com, where you say 13 male Republican senators have been meeting in private to draft a bill. No one else knows what's in it. There have been no hearings, no public debate. Democrats and the public are completely locked out. So this is Missouri Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill speaking on the Senate floor.
When you say that you're inviting us, and I heard you, Mr. Secretary, just say we'd love your support, for what? We don't even know. We have no idea what's being proposed. There's a group of guys in a back room somewhere that are making these decisions. There were no hearings in the House. I mean, listen, this is hard to take because I know we made mistakes on the Affordable Health Care Act, Mr. Secretary. And one of the criticisms we got over and over again that the vote was partisan. Well, you couldn't have a more partisan exercise than what you're engaged in right now. We're not even going to have a hearing on a bill that impacts 1/6 of our economy.
That's Missouri Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill.
I mean, that went viral. It's powerful. I mean, it speaks to a basic truth that this country, citizens deserve and demand hearings. But do you remember the rank hypocrisy of Mitch McConnell about the Obamacare ACA process? It was very deliberative. There were many hearings. There was the ability for Republicans to weigh in. Now he's going on about, well, no, this is what happened with Obamacare. BS. But I think it demands massive citizen mobilization, Amy, to demand that there be hearings. And I think because there may be some Republican fall-offs, because of the Medicaid issue primarily. Some senators like what's gone on in their states. If you can get this to the July 4th recess, your viewers and millions of others should be out there demanding hearings, demanding a slowdown of a process. We've seen this too often, too. I'm reminded of the Patriot Act, which passed in 2 or 3 days, and it later turned out no one had really read it. This is not a functional democracy or representative government.
I mean, as all the emphasis is being put on the Russia investigation, Democrats hoping this could lead to the impeachment of Donald Trump, you have the dismantling of the administrative state right now at every level.
Absolutely. And listen, the focus on Russia, the obsession with Russia, is stymieing this government. I mean, it is creating dysfunction. But at the same time, it is stripping, you don't have the oxygen to give to the attention that this deserves. And I think that should be where we now, what we're witnessing with the way McConnell and the Republicans are ramming this through, by the way, which is not unusual. We've seen this, remember in North Carolina, the Republicans are pretty brutalist kinds of politicians, and we need to be tough in response. And I think that demands exposure, so that demands a media that pays attention to this predatory, dangerous, toxic politics. And linking it, by the way, to 2018, let me come back to where we began. When we head into 2018, everyone should be talking about what the Republicans did to strip people, working people, Trump supporters, all people, if they get away with it, and fighting for a different kind of set of policies at the state level for now, because the federal's going to be tough.
And finally, what about the battle within the Democratic Party? Which direction to go?
I think it's real. I mean, I think there's some substantive issues, and I am a believer that we need, I think Jon Ossoff was, it is a tough district, Ruby Red and all of that, but I think people seek people speaking to their lived experience. What are they going to do on health care? What are they going to do about education in their kids' lives? What are they going to do about a living wage? So I think those, in my view, sometimes aren't, as Reverend Barber, another good reverend, has said, those are not left-right issues. Those are right and wrong issues. And I think there's a way to speak to them.
And do you think the Democratic Party currently is?
I think the Democratic platform, which Bernie Sanders stayed in that race to fight for one of the most progressive Democratic platforms.
That's the platform, but the party, how it is actually...
There is a struggle on, but I think you will see, I believe, candidates running on a more progressive message in 2018 and in 2020, and putting together new coalitions and not pitting white working class versus the rising American majority. There's a working class, and one has to speak to that and bring together new coalitions, as Stacey Abrams is trying to do.
Katrina vanden Heuvel, thanks so much for being with us, editor and publisher of The Nation, America's oldest weekly magazine. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, the story of a family that is threatened with deportation right here in New York, in Little Pakistan in Brooklyn. Stay with us.
No, I don't know just why. No, I don't know just why. Which way to turn? I got this ticket to use. Through childlike ways, rebellion and crime, to reach this point and retreat back again. The broken hearts, all the wheels that have turned, the memory scarred and the vision is blurred. No, I don't know which way. Don't know which way to turn. The best possible use. Just passing through till we reach the next stage. Just to where, well, it's all been arranged. Just passing through, but the break must be made. Should we move on or stay safely away?
From Safety to Where by Joy Division. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Can the Brooklyn neighborhood of Little Pakistan survive the presidency of Donald Trump? That's the question posed by a new piece in the New Yorker magazine. Writer Jennifer Gonnerman looks in part at the story of Shahid Ali Khan and his family, who are facing possible deportation. For years, they successfully received stays of removal, but this year appears to be different. On July 6th, they have a meeting scheduled at the ICE Enforcement and Removal Field Office. That meeting could determine if the family can stay in the United States. We're joined now by two guests. Mohammad Razvi is founding executive director of Council of People's Organizations, and we're joined by Jennifer Gonnerman, staff writer for the New Yorker magazine, who's written the piece, Fighting for the Immigrants of Little Pakistan. Jennifer, talk about this extremely poignant story of this family who came to this country to save the life of their baby boy.
Right, it's an extraordinary story. The Khans came in 1997, two parents and a baby who was not yet two. The father was a bank manager in Pakistan. He gave up everything because his son was born with a heart defect and needed surgery that couldn't be gotten in Pakistan. He looked into various countries to come to, ultimately got a visa to come to the United States, came to Brooklyn, went from one hospital to another, and ultimately ends up at Mount Sinai. And when his son is 2 years old, he gets open heart surgery there.
Here in New York City.
Exactly,
Mount Sinai.
exactly. And then, as a consequence of that surgery, the son ends up suffering a very rare movement disorder in which he's unable to control his limbs, can't eat, can't feed himself, can't walk, needs a feeding tube, wheelchair, and the family has no choice but to stay. So even after their visa runs out, they try to get, an extension, and they stay here and continue to get medical treatment for their son. And over the next years, the son makes terrific progress. He's now walking, though not too steadily. He talks a little bit, not too easy to understand, but his progress has been tremendous. And the family continues to get treated at Mount Sinai and elsewhere.
And they say he will not be able to proceed like this or progress if he is forced out.
His doctors say that the treatment he needs, he's got a number of very complicated and unusual medical conditions, and the support system that he has here, he will not have if he's sent back to Pakistan. I had heard about the family because it's somebody that Mr. Razvi had helped in the past, post 9/11, and somebody he was very proud of helping and being able to stop their deportation many years into the past. And then I happened to be in his office, it was about a week or two ago, finishing up this story for the New Yorker. And suddenly, here comes Mr. Khan, completely despondent, straight from the ICE office, had come to Mr. Razvi's office for help and told us that he was at risk of deportation.
So this is a story, Mohammad Razvi, you've been dealing with for many years. In fact, you have the picture of the little boy when he was very young thanking you for stopping his dad's deportation years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still remember that day, his son, and he came in and he said, Mohammed, this is what my son made for you. And he brings in this card and it says, thank you. Thank you for bringing my dad back. And, at that time he graduated from elementary school and he really wasn't able to speak as much as Jennifer was saying, but it was just heart-filling that, we were able to save this person.
So what are the chances now? You represent so many in the Pakistani community who come to you for help. July 6th is the day they have to go into the ICE office. Is it the whole family or just Shahid Ali Khan, the father?
No, it's the whole family.
Could be deported after decades here.
After decades of being here. And it is very fearful. We are very concerned. We are working with the attorney, and we're also going to be reaching out to Senator Schumer's office and also Congresswoman Yvette Clarke's office to have their assistance as well. That's what we did in the past, to get the elected officials to also weigh in for this family.
Is the Pakistani community particularly afraid now? I mean, is this as bad as the period after 9/11?
This is bad, and it's actually worse at this moment because the child and the mother were not in deportation proceedings previously. Now they are put into deportation proceedings as well. And it's happening to many families who are doing routine checks with the immigration officers, and all of a sudden now they're being put into deportation proceedings.
We're going to continue this discussion. Post online at democracynow.org. Mohammad Razvi, founding executive director of Council of Peoples Organizations, community group serving Muslims, Arabs, and South Asians, as well as Jen Gunnerman, will link to your piece in the New Yorker magazine, Fighting for the Immigrants of Little Pakistan. This is Democracy Now! Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Dina Guzder, Nermeen Sheikh, Carla Wills, Laura Gottesdiener, Sam Malkoff, John Hamilton, Rabi Karen, Hani Massoud, Sharina Nadura, Andre Lewis. I'm Amy Goodman. Our website is democracynow.org. You can read, see, watch all the shows at Democracy Now!